Valentine's Day is right around the corner, so I want to share my top 12 picks for the holiday because I love romance, I love love, I love eyeshadow, I love sparkle, and honestly, I just need any excuse to talk about eyeshadow. Hi, my name is Noopur. I love indie makeup and all things color and sparkle, as already stated, and welcome back to my channel. Also, if you would like to give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, or even leave a comment down below, because I'm nosy. I would love to know what are your favorite singles for Valentine's Day, but seriously, every piece of engagement really helps me since I am still getting started out here on YouTube. So I feel like I just did back-to-back videos of a bunch of newly launched indie Valentine's Day palettes, and so instead of doing a roundup of my favorite palettes for Valentine's Day, I thought I would instead do a roundup of my favorite single shadows, especially because a lot of you have been asking me for some singles focused content. Just a disclaimer before we get started, I did receive some of these singles in PR and I have codes with some of these brands, so that information will be listed on screen / in the description box. Also, I just want to point out that some of these releases might be discontinued or just no longer available due to the nature of a lot of smaller indie brands, and I didn't want to not include those singles in this video just because they're discontinued. I wanted to choose singles that I truly felt passionate about, and the longer I thought about it, the more comfortable I felt with that decision, especially because I feel like at this point in the indie makeup world, between how many releases there are and new brands coming up every day, I feel like at some point, each of these shades will be duped eventually. And I think that that is a good enough reason for me to keep them in this video. And also, if they can't be duped, some of these have multicolored sparkles, so I really encourage you to look at your own collection and see if you can do a little shade cascade, which, if you don't know what that is, it's my term for layering shadows to get that dimensional multicolored sparkle effect. One more note, last one, I promise. Actually, no, it's not the last one. 2 more notes. First note is that I will have all of my makeup details in the description box. I'm actually not wearing any of these singles on my eyes right now. This is makeup that I filmed for a short form tutorial that will be up eventually at some point this week. And then the second note is I want to talk about how I do my swatches for these videos. So what I do is I do an opaque swatch up top like this, and then I take whatever is remaining on my finger and I tap it below for a more sheer swatch, just so you can get, you know, 2 different looks at the eyeshadow. And then the other thing that I do is when I'm rotating my hand back and forth in front of the camera like this, I do both an in-focus shot and an out-of-focus shot just to give you, again, 2 different looks at the eyeshadow. Okay, now we can finally get into the video. So here are the 12 singles. I actually initially wanted to do 10, but I have a hard time editing things down, and quite honestly, I started with 20 singles and I had to even force myself to pare it down to these 12. So a top 12 is what you're getting. This is Quicksand Love Letter. It has a very sheer, I think colorless base with sparkles that shift purple, pink, and gold, but there are also tiny blue sparkles dispersed throughout. This shadow is on the texture side, but not too flaky, though it is pretty loose in the pan. It is the usual dry Quicksand formula and super sparkly. So I'm starting off with the shade because I am such a big fan of Quicksand Cosmetics. They are a super small indie brand. I believe it's a one-woman show, and because of that, a lot of their eyeshadows will come in and out of stock, and sometimes they just won't be available for long periods of time. But it's worth it because this formula, I don't have anything quite like this formula in my collection. The closest thing that I have is some of the shadows from Shine by SD, and even then they're not exactly the same. What makes this formula so special is it's ultra dry, like super dry, and almost a little cornstarchy feeling, but I think it's because of that and the texture in the shadow that makes them so ultra sparkly. And there are some more smooth shadows from this brand, and those are still just as sparkly, and I don't know how she does it. This is such a beautiful glowy pink shade with flecks of different colors all throughout it, and I feel like Quicksand was one of the brands that I think started doing the whole multicolored sparkles trend kind of early on, right after Shine by SD, if I'm not mistaken, which I feel like Shine by SD popularized it with the Earthborn collection with Riley, which, spoiler alert, one of these shadows is from that collection. And if you know that collection, guess which one it is. And then the other thing that I love about the shadow is that it has a really sheer base, which makes it super versatile because I can pair it with a variety of matte colors and get slightly different effects. If you are concerned about texture or fallout, I would definitely use the shadow with a glitter glue or a tacky primer of some sort because, like I said, it's a bit more on the textured side and the shadow is pretty dry too, which does make them prone to fallout. But I actually prefer to wear these without any glitter glue because I feel like it gives that scattered twinkle, which I really, really love. This is Bella Beaute Bar Spellcaster. It has a sheer medium gray base with sparkles that shift purple, pink, and gold. There is some texture to the shadow, but it smooths out easily. The formula is a bit on the dry side and very lightweight for Bella Beaute Bar, which makes it easy to work with. It's also super sparkly. The thing that I love about this shadow is how purple it is in the shimmers itself. I find that with a lot of seemingly purple eyeshadows, they aren't actually all that purple because they're manipulating the pigments or the base or whatever to make it look purple, but this shadow actually looks purple straight on. I have the shadow swatched down here, and one of the other things that I love about this shadow is the sheer gray base because I feel like sheer gray bases look so good on medium and deeper skin tones. Something about it allows the pigments to really shine and glow. And much like the previous shadow, Love Letter up here, both of these having a sheer base means that they're super versatile and you can pair them with a bunch of different mattes. And I have most commonly worn Spellcaster with purple mattes, which really helps boost the purple shimmer, and it's just divine. The other thing that I want to note about this shadow is the formula. So Bella Beaute Bar has a variety of formulas for their shimmer specifically, and I find that some of them can be on the emollient and creamy side, but this one is actually quite dry and it makes the texture of the sparkles really stand out and twinkle. Also, I did check the website to see if it's still in stock because Bella Beaute Bar doesn't always have all of their singles in stock, and not only is this available right now, but it's also marked down to $10. Now, I don't know if that means it's being discontinued or if it's just on sale. I just wanted to point it out. This is Clionadh Empress. It has a vibrant coral base and shifts pink, peach, gold, and lime. It's part of the Glitter Vibrant line. This one has a medium particle size that smooths out easily. It has a good formula, but there is some weight to the shade, so I would be careful not to layer too much of it or it could get thick. So I had to include Empress because this was one of the first shades that I knew that I was going to be picking up when Clionadh did their first big stained glass collection expansion. Not the original launch, but you know the one where they came out with like 50 plus new shades, and they launched like the Earth Vibrant collection and the Electric collection, that expansion. And when I first got it, I loved it so much that I did like 2 to 3 looks on my page with it, and then I honestly kind of forgot about it for a while. But then I was looking at my collection when I was trying to make up my mind for this video to select my top 12, and I looked at this and I was like, oh wow, I haven't used that in a while and I should really pull it out again because it is one of my favorite shades. The shade is swatched right here, and one of the things that I love about this shade is how vibrant both the base and the shifts are. I mean, you can see the shifts over here, but especially when I turn it away from the light, you can see how prominent that coral pink base is, especially compared to these two. And I just feel like it provides such a nice contrast to the shifts. And the shifts, my God, this shadow is super, super shifty. You can see it even just me turning my hand right here. And every time I wear it, I'm always like moving my head around in the mirror trying to catch a glimpse of all the shifts because it's just so magical. This is Shine by SD Lavish. It has no base and multicolored sparkles. There's a layer of pinky orange to gold to green shifting sparkles that are very fine in size. Then another layer of more sparkly and slightly larger blue sparkles that shift to purple and then pink. It is super dimensional. There is some texture to the shadow, but it smooths out easily. It is on the dry side and very sparkly and wet looking. So this shadow, Lavish, is from Shine by SD's Sparkle Lights collection, and honestly, the entire collection is so beautiful. Definitely, to me, one of the top releases of last year, because some of the shadows are a bit more on the vibrant side, but a lot of them are a bit more subdued and kind of neutral adjacent. Like this just kind of looks shiny from far away, but when you look at it up close, you see all of those multicolored sparkles. And that's something that all of the shadows in this collection share, is that dimensional multicolored sparkle. It's swatched down here, and something I want to note about this shadow and all of the sparkle lights is that the formula is bonkers. I don't know what she put in these shadows, but they sparkle and shine just incredibly. And Shine by SD is known for having sparkly shadows, but these have such a special texture to them. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but whenever I want an easy to throw on and high impact shadow, I reach for one of these because they work super well on their own with mattes. They layer really well with other shadows. They're just all around such a good release. And this specific color is one of my favorites from the sparkle lights. And I feel like it's particularly good for Valentine's Day because actually, I don't know why I find that it's good for Valentine's Day, because it has a romantic feel to me, but it doesn't actually have, it's not primarily pink. Like from a distance, this looks to me, at least in the viewfinder, it looks more blue. And it does have pink sparkles in it, but it's not overtly pink. So I don't know what it is about the shadow. Maybe it's just the texture, but I just think that it's such a pretty shade. This is Shine by SD Frisky. This has a fairly pigmented but easy to sheer out pink base with contrasting gold sparkles that don't shift much and are a medium particle size. There is also a layer of very fine red to gold sparkles mixed in. This has the typical dry Shine by SD texture and isn't too loosely pressed in the pan. This is very unique in my collection. I never hear anyone talking about this shade, and I kind of overlooked it at first because, well, I purchased this and I never used it. It was just sitting around. And then one day I looked at it in the palette and I was like, okay, I need to do a look with this. And I put it on and I thought to myself, I have never felt so pretty. And well, actually, no, that's not true. It's just, I put it on and I felt so feminine and girly and princess-like and fairy-like and all of the things that I strive to be. And that is why I love this shadow so much. It's swatched right here. It's such a dreamy color. I love the specific tone of the base. It's a pink, but it's not a super warm pink. And it's more of like, I don't want to say mauve, but it's got a touch of purple in it, which sets it apart from being a true pink. And the gold sparkles in it really stand out. I feel like they are a different texture from the pink base, which is what makes them stand out. And then there are also some red pinprick sparkles in here that are not super visible at first glance, but they add something really special to the shadow. And you know how I feel about the Shine by SD formula. They make some super sparkly and twinkly eyeshadows, and this is no exception, and all without being too flaky. I mean, Shine by SD does have some flaky shadows, but this is not one of them. This is Dieverune Necromancy. This has a sheer smoky gray base with sparkles that shift red, orange, gold, and even lime at the harshest angle. This looks textured in the pan, but applies very smoothly. It can be sheared out easily. It feels very creamy and almost wet in the pan, but I don't know if this would crease if you are prone to that. So I don't actually have a lot of red shades in my Valentine's Day roundup. And I feel like it's a little odd because when you look around, at least for marketing and merchandising and that kind of thing in regards to Valentine's Day, red is like the color. But to me, red is such a strong, powerful color that it's not necessarily one that I want to wear, at least on my eyelids, for Valentine's Day. Because to me, I don't know what it is. I think like I just want to gravitate towards pink and purple softer shades for Valentine's Day, but I had to include at least one red, so this is the one that I went for. Here's the shadow swatched over here, and something that I really like about this shadow is that the base is kind of sheer and smoky, so you can build it up for a very intense red smoky eye, or you can sheer it out to have more of a softer finish with just like a light wash of the red sparkles. And my god, are those red sparkles quite intense, because this is not that strong of a swatch, and you can definitely see how red it is here. Also, I just really quickly want to go back to talking about the base of this shadow, because the sheer smoky, kind of like deep gray base is what sets this apart from other red shadows that I have. I feel like a lot of brands launched red shadows last year, and this one really stands out from the rest of them because of this base. Also, I think I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but this shade was curated by Lee. Lee is one of my mutuals over on Instagram. I'll link them in the description box, and they made this along with Dieverune Cosmetics. This is Shine by SD Sundog. This has a muted indigo base and a shimmer that shifts pinky orange, gold, yellow, lime. This one is a bit harder pressed, very smooth, and not as sparkly as the rest of the shades in this roundup. Instead, it has more of a glow from within effect. It has the typical dry Shine by SD texture. It shears out easily, but since it's not as sparkly, it's not as impactful that way. So this shade is really special. First of all, it was created by Shine by SD in collaboration with the one and only Seeking Shifts, Riley, and it's part of the Earthborn collection, which quite honestly, that entire collection still has some really special shadows that I reach for till this day. But also, I feel like what makes this shadow so special is that it looks so different on people depending on their skin tone and their undertones. It's swatched right here, and you can see on me that base is visible, but somehow when I put it on my eyes, the way it contrasts against my skin tone, it makes the shift on top glow. It looks like a frosted light bulb. And I've seen this on lighter skin tones, and that base is a lot more visible, and it gives almost like a bruisey effect, I want to say, but on me, something about the way that it contrasts against that glow makes it look so romantic almost, which is why I think it's such a great pick for Valentine's Day. Also, I've topped this shade with Ice Blink, which is also from the Earthborn collection, and that is a 10 out of 10 combo because this shade, Sundog, is not the most sparkly, but when I want to bring the sparkle, layering Ice Blink works super well because Ice Blink has an orange shifting base with blue sparkles mixed in, and so the orange base of Ice Blink combines really well with the orange shift here, and then that really allows the blue sparkles in Ice Blink to pop. This is Terra Moon's Tidal Flare. This has a deep smoky purple base with a shimmer that shifts pink, orange, and gold. This one is very smooth and has a fine particle size. It is also not as sparkly as the other shades, but still a step above Sundog. The formula is very middle of the road, not too dry or creamy. It would make a good base for layering under more sparkly shades. So to me, Tidal Flare is almost like a cousin of Sundog. It is the deeper, moodier version of Sundog because it still has a purpley base that's much smokier, and then it has those warm orange shifts over it, but it's just like, I don't know, it's like the emo cousin. It's swatched right here, and I've talked about this before, but this combo of a purple base with warm shifts over it is one of my all-time favorite combos, and since this is actually a bit of an older shade from Terra Moon's, I'm convinced that this is where my love affair with these types of shades started. Like Sundog, this is not the most sparkly shade, and again, that's what I value about it, because I feel like the glow that this has on your eyes it has the most sultry effect, especially paired with a deep base. And I know that not everyone is big on deep, dark eyeshadows, aside from my friend Hersa, but I feel like those are some of the most sultry eyeshadows. Also, Hersa and my other friend Smitha recently did a collab of their sultriest eyeshadows here on YouTube. Highly recommend checking it out. I'll link it in the description box. The other thing that I want to say about Tidal Flare is actually about more glowy, less sparkly shadows in general. I know that most of us, myself included, are sparkle goblins, but I do wish brands would kind of go back to making less sparkly, more smooth shades, because I feel like those give such a refined finish to the eyes. And not only that, but they're also really good for layering, which I am personally a huge fan of. So this is my petition for brands to make more of the older style of eyeshadow. This is Shine by SD Ethos. It has a very sheer purple base. There's a layer of super fine blue sparkles that shift purple and then pink. Then there is also a layer of medium-sized pink sparkles that shift gold. The overall effect is that it's a purple shadow, even though the individual sparkles are not really purple. It is super sparkly and has a dry texture. It's very special and unique in my collection. Speaking of Smitha, this is from Smitha's collab with Shine by SD, the Forest Hues and Mystic Dreams collection. I have nothing like this in my collection. Nothing. It is so unique, and because of that, I am so sad that it's being discontinued. I checked the Shine by SD website, and it has a little tag in the description saying that's being discontinued. So if you are interested in this shade, I would recommend picking it up sooner rather than later. What makes the shadow so special to me is that it is described as being a pastel-based purple multichrome. And if you know me, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of pastels on myself, and I feel like they can sometimes look a little harsh. But this shadow, while it does look pastel-y to the camera, I feel like the fact that it doesn't have much of a base, it's quite sheer, you can see here, that is what makes it work on my skin tone so well. And I just haven't really seen a ton of brands do this type of shade. And the texture of this shade is also what makes it special. It's got that lovely Shine by SD texture, which this is my favorite formula from the brand because it's not the ultra smooth formula, but it's not the flaky formula either. It's got a little bit of texture to it, but it smooths out really well. And the texture that is in it is what makes it twinkle and sparkle so beautifully. This is another one of those shades that just makes me feel so beautiful when I wear it. And it's probably because it's purple, and that's one of my favorite colors to wear on my eyes. But I actually wore this to an in real life friend meetup, like Instagram friend meetup, and when we stepped outside into the sun, both of them had to know what was on my eyes because they were fascinated with how sparkly and beautiful it was. And you know, when indie makeup lovers want to know what's on your eyes, that's when you know it's really special. This is Glaminatrix Scarlett. This has a rich burgundy berry base with the tiniest, most minuscule sparkles of other colors. You really cannot even make them out unless you are staring super closely. There is a slight shift to orange. This is from the Glistening Creations line from the brand that is a smooth formula with metallic finish but still very sparkly. It isn't super dry or creamy. This is another shade that's a bit on the deeper side, not as much as Tidal Flare, but still a little deeper than I think some people are comfy going, and to that I say, please, please, please just give these types of shades a chance. You don't even have to put these types of shades all over your lid if you're not comfortable with it. Sometimes what I want to do is take darker shades and just put them on the outer corner because I like my shimmers to go over my entire lid, but I still want the outer corner to be pretty smoky and have a lot of depth. And I also don't want to always extend my mattes all the way out. So the way to still get a bit of smokiness and depth on the outer corner is to put a dark shimmer there. And that's when something like this comes into play. Here's the shade swatched, and what I was talking about with it being on the outer corner is actually how I wore it when I first got it, which was around 2 birthdays ago. I actually wore this on my birthday itself, along with a lighter shade on the inner half of my eyelid, and together it just made for the most beautiful berry burgundy look. So this shadow is part of Glaminatrix Glistening Creation line, which used to be named the Glimmering Creatures, I believe, and all of them had animal names, which is why this is named Scarlett. And I find that with this shade, like most of the others in the Glistening Creations line, but especially with this one, the more you build it up, the more metallic it's going to be, and the more you sheer it out and buff the edges, the more it brings out that twinkle. This is Devinah Elektra. It has no base and shifts vibrant pink, gold, and lime at the harshest angle. It has some texture in the pan and applies easily, but in a dispersed way. Because of both of those things, it is very sparkly. This has a good formula to it, not too dry or creamy. This is another older favorite, and it's not all that old, quite honestly, but the way that I mentally keep track of makeup, it feels a little older to me. But I purchased this shade because I was so intrigued by how it was described as a baseless shadow with really vibrant shifts. And when I got it in person, that is in fact what it is. It's swatched right here, and what I mean by it has no base is you can see when I move my hand away from the light, there's no pigment, no color there. And whatever shadow you're seeing here is just from the texture of the sparkles themselves. But at the same time, this is not an iridescent shadow because you saw the pan. It wasn't white in the pan. It was pink in the pan. And so this truly is weirdly a baseless shadow. And I wish that we had more shadows like this because true iridescence can get a little ashy or chalky if you build them up, especially the deeper your skin tone is. They can sometimes go ashy on me, and I have a medium skin tone. And so I feel like shades like this are a lot more friendly for those of us with medium and deeper skin tones. This shade does have a little bit of texture to it, and it's not flaky or anything. It smooths out pretty easily, but if you want a opaque finish with this eyeshadow, I would definitely recommend using some kind of glitter glue or tacky primer. Otherwise, you will get kind of a more dispersed effect and see through to the no base of the shadow. This is Clionadh Quest. This has a pigmented muted indigo base and shifts a vibrant cool pink, peach, gold, and chartreuse. This is part of the Electric line. It is very smooth and has a small particle size. This one isn't a satin by any means, but it's also not as sparkly as some of the other shades. It's more shiny than sparkly. We are at the final shade, and it's from Clionadh, and I actually want to quickly talk about a different shade called Entropy because I do think that is such a perfect Valentine's Day shadow, but I didn't want to include it in this video because I have recently talked about it in a different video. So I decided to go with Quest because Quest has stood the test of time. It's swatched right here, and this is another one that I picked up when Clionadh did that giant stained glass collection expansion, and I love it just as much today as I did when I first picked it up. This is in a colorway that I adore. I love that the base is more of an indigo purple, and something about it contrasts so well with my skin tone, kind of in a similar way that the base of Sundog does, and then that also allows for the shifts to really pop. And the shifts in the shadow, it's not as sparkly as some other shades that I have from Clionadh. And again, that's what makes this so special because I remember when I first wore this shadow, I took a picture, and I'll try to find it and put it up on the screen somewhere. But I remember I took a photo and I was shocked because I was in indirect light and the shadow still looked like it was glowing. And that was it. I was hooked. Here's a look at all of the shadows in my photo setup, just to give you a different look at all of the shades and their textures. I couldn't fit all 12 on my arm and also in frame in this setup, but hopefully you can see how some of them compare against each other. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on these shadows. Do you have any of them? Are you interested in any of them? And of course, what are your favorite shadows for Valentine's Day? Also, if you're curious, I can list the remaining singles that I did not include in this video, the ones that I had to cut out because I still do really love those shadows, and I was just trying to limit myself to keep this video from being just way too long. I hope everyone has a wonderful Valentine's week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!